Hello, my name is Lorna Godwin of Vector Communications, and with me is internationally recognized economic development expert Bruce Katz of New Localism Associates. Bruce authored STL 2030 Jobs Plan. Bruce, so nice to see you again.
Great to see you.
Well, now that you have released the updated version of the STL 2030 Jobs Plan, let's talk about it. Let's begin with why is this plan so important for the St. Louis region, particularly right now?
Well, every metro in the United States, particularly one that's the 20th largest metro, needs to focus on a regular basis. What are your distinct assets and advantages? How are you performing as a metropolitan area? Is everyone sharing in prosperity, all parts of the region, all people? And obviously, St. Louis had a tough prior decade. It was slow to come out of the recession, though it was beginning to pick up in 2016, 2017, 2018. With all the disruption of the pandemic, it's even more important now to understand who you are as a metropolitan economy and to leverage those critical assets. Because post-pandemic, we're going to see a couple places in the US, I think, come out of the chute, begin to lead the pack, begin to focus on major investments, some of it coming from the federal government, to really put them in good stead for growth, but also for, as important, inclusive growth, which is the North Star of this plan.
Right. And St. Louis was one of the places where we were planning during the pandemic.
I mean, you're really one of the few. I think most metropolitan areas, perhaps they did have a plan in the middle part of the last decade, because many parts of the US have very mature business leadership and civic organizations. They just do this as a matter of course. But I think St. Louis used the pandemic time well to get your arms around what makes you a very powerful economy, very rich in assets, has not totally leveraged its full potential, has clearly not worked for all parts of the metropolitan area. It was the perfect time to do a jobs plan.
Yeah. Well, you began researching and analyzing our region's economy along with a broad and diverse group of civic volunteers, as you said, more than a year ago. And then you released the draft plan in December when we talked initially. And since then, we've had a nearly 5-month community feedback period where we have received thousands of comments and conducted important public dialogue. You have worked all over the world with cities. How does the engagement that took place in St. Louis compare to what you've seen in the past?
Well, it was remarkable on several levels. First of all, it was all online, so that was quite different. And second, it was from all parts of the metro. And I think the turnout was really quite significant. What I took from all the different conversations throughout the metropolitan area is people really care about this region. They are committed to this place. They want a better future for themselves and for their children. And the comments were constructive. They were civil, they were specific. Folks see the importance of this because they know that post-pandemic, we are going to see a reshaping of the economy in many respects. And those places that can act with intentionality and purpose are more likely to lead.
And there were some people and organizations who reached out during this comment period who said, hey, we were not included in the initial analysis and study. And you reached out to them and talked to them, and their input is included in the updated version, correct?
No, absolutely. I mean, this was a true listening session. This is, metropolitan economies, particularly those that are as large as St. Louis, are complicated organisms. So you can't get it right just from quantitative analysis. You can't get it right just from whatever number of interviews you hold. You have to keep digging and searching and making sure that all voices are heard.
One of the most significant changes to the plan that came out of the public feedback was on the definition and goals of inclusive growth. First, define for us what is meant by inclusive growth.
Well, inclusive growth actually is a term that doesn't have a set definition either in the United States or the world. So we had to invent one that worked for St. Louis. So what we basically came up with was a definition that is really two major components. You need to grow quality jobs because again, the region was stagnating during the past decade, was slow to come out of the Great Recession. And you need to reduce racial and spatial disparities on income and wealth. So it's a really sort of a dual track um, kind of definition. And in other parts of the country pre-COVID, if you said to someone, "What's inclusive growth?" and you asked them that in San Francisco or in Boston or in London, they would say, "Oh, you must be talking about affordable housing." So we had a different definition that we felt, working with people like Michelle Tucker at United Way, was St. Louis specific. Then, of course, we had to create goals off the definition.
Right.
Because of the disruption of the pandemic, we have not worked with numerical goals because the baseline data is a little choppy right now. But from a qualitative perspective, we came up with 5 goals that really come from the definition.
What are those goals?
So first one, grow quality jobs. Second, increase the large employer and other business commitment to buy local, hire local, invest local. I mean, have your major anchor institutions work harder for the region. The third is to boost employment in the core, because not just the downtown, but the entire city of St. Louis has an outsized effect on the metropolitan area. When it's doing well, the entire metropolitan area is doing well. And St. Louis is a radically dispersed, decentralized economy. So having more employment in the core is critical. Fourth, increase the share of Black workers with quality jobs. Because from our definition of quality jobs, which is really jobs that pay more than 80% of median income, only 44% of Black workers have such jobs compared to 70% of white workers. So this gap has to be filled. And finally, critical, grow Black and brown entrepreneurs and businesses, because this pandemic has disproportionately negatively affected Black and brown businesses because they tend to be undercapitalized, underbanked, and in sectors that were hard hit by the pandemic.
Absolutely. So those are the 5 goals for inclusive growth, and stewarding inclusive growth is one of the 5 strategies you outline in the plan. What are the other 4 strategies?
So the other 4 strategies, to some extent, reflect some of the goals. There's a consistency to all this, which is really important. So the second goal was restore the core as an area of employment density, and we think that St. Louis has a very interesting potential here because of the growth around Cortex, the growth around the National Geospatial Agency, the growth around Square and around FinTech, some of the key aspects of the downtown, the new soccer stadium, Rankin Tech north of Del Mar. So this is a broader geography of the core than just the downtown, because you have so many assets in the city. The third goal is to create a world-class small business ecosystem that invests in enterprises across a continuum, small business, retail, tech, entrepreneurs, building on the phenomenal work of Arch Grants, deep tech, commercialized research. But there needs to be some new moves here around supplier diversity, coming out of your eds and meds and corps and utilities in the government, entrepreneurial support investments. The fourth goal is to become a talent magnet. I mean, there's an enormous competition for skilled workers, and closer relationships between your business community and higher ed institutions, community colleges, high schools, skills providers, fundamental. Last goal is to build on your advanced industries. So quadruple down on biosciences. You are globally significant on biosciences because you're both a health hub and a plant science hub. Very unusual. But then also build on location science, advanced manufacturing, et cetera, financial services. I mean, St. Louis is a very powerful economy. It has assets that most metropolitan areas would kill for, but you now have to unlock them. And so that's really the last strategy.
Yeah. Well, you have delivered this plan to Greater St. Louis, Inc. And we say that this STL 23 jobs plan is a living document that will evolve over the next decade. So we as a region have a lot of work to do, but if we fund and implement the strategies that you have outlined, what impact could it have on the St. Louis region?
Well, I think it could have dramatic impact. I think you will be much more competitive in the United States and globally. And what that will mean, more jobs, more quality jobs, more opportunities for people in the metropolitan area to realize their full potential, raising their incomes, growing their wealth and assets. That's what a successful metropolitan area can be, and particularly by keeping a focus on inclusive growth, which has not normally been what metropolitan areas are focused on, so critical during this period because of the pandemic, but because of the racial reckoning we're having in our country. I think St. Louis can stand apart from the rest of metropolitan areas. So there's some very positive outcomes that can come from implementing this plan with intentionality and purpose.
Well, we certainly plan to stand apart and to leverage the assets that we have. So thank you, Bruce, so much for your expertise, your energy, and your enthusiasm in particular for St. Louis. We are going to work together to achieve your goals, and hopefully we will have an even better region. So thanks again.
Well, thank you, Laura. It's been wonderful working with you.
Take care. And thank you for watching. Bye-bye.